Hi everyone, thanks for joining in today. I'm excited to have Kat Walker joining me. So
Hello.
Kat was born in the sunny seaside town of Scarborough in North Yorkshire, England, and she is a grown up eternal student with a passion for travel, which has seen her wandering the globe in search of truth. She has travelled extensively throughout Europe and Southeast Asia and spent time living in Ireland, France, and Australia. And The Scoop is her debut novel. In her spare time, she writes fiction and poetry, and once co-wrote and directed a successful amateur musical, Honeybees the Musical, which was the world's first lesbian field hockey musical. That sounds really, really interesting. Which had sold out performances. You'll have to tell us a bit more about that. And Kat currently lives in Brighton with her wife and young son, and she is not having a midlife crisis. So thanks so much for joining us. Really excited to have you. Just wondering if you want to tell us a little bit more about The Scoop.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, I was laughing because I'm not so sure. I think as time goes on, that last sentence is less and less true about having a midlife crisis. But anyway, let's let's move on from there. So yeah, The Scoop. Obviously, this is the first question that authors always get asked. Tell us about your book, and you'd be surprised how difficult it is to do that concisely. But I went last summer with my mother to a book festival in Scarborough, and I met a BBC radio DJ from Britain, Jeremy Vine, and he gave me some fantastic advice. He said, you need to be able to pitch your book in 10 words. So I sat there and I came up with these 10 words. So this is all I need to say, apparently. So my 10-word pitch is, curious woman seeks meaning of life in travelling ice cream van. And I'm counting ice cream as one word. So that's essentially the kernel of the story. It's really about this hapless 30-something Casey Jones. And Casey wakes up one morning to the realization that her life is kind of going nowhere and she's not getting any younger. Something we all feel from time to time. And so, like a lot of people, she feels that traveling might be the answer. She might be able to find the answers that she's looking for, and allow her to heal some old wounds that she has. So she sets off on this mad journey, and it's semi-planned. They end up going in a converted ice cream van, who's called Alice. And she plans this trip with her old school friend, Danny, who's a bit of a Lothario, a bit of a Romeo. And unexpectedly, you find out in the first couple of chapters that his young son, his estranged son, who he doesn't really see a lot of, Ari, is coming along for the trip. Casey is not pleased about this, and a lot of the story kind of unfolds around her relationship with Ari and with Danny, who kind of, their friendship blossoms again. But the trip doesn't really go as planned. A lot of things happen. And I always say that on one level, this book is the story of three very different travellers who are finding themselves on an adventurous romp through Europe and Asia. But on another level, the book tries to tackle some of life's sort of thorny little mysteries, like how to live a good and meaningful life. And I actually had one reviewer call it more amusing and more British in outlook than Eat, Pray, Love, which I was absolutely thrilled about. I mean, it's it's a different storyline, but I guess it's in that kind of nook of the bookshop. And I guess I've billed it myself as Bill Bryson meets a lesbian Bridget Jones, or a Sophie's World on Wheels, or a Zen and the Art of Ice Cream Maintenance. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's a great synopsis of your book, I think. I've read it and did find it fun reading.
Great. Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I'm wondering, like at the start, we said that you've done a lot of travel yourself. How much of things you might have done or thought about while you're away are in your book?
Yeah, a lot. So the idea first came to me when I was traveling, and this is 15 years ago. And I guess you could say I was doing the same thing that Casey was, traveling to find myself, the old cliche. And I was writing a blog home to people as I travelled around with sort of amusing little stories about silly things that happen when you travel. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is so good, you should write a book," as friends do. And I thought, oh, do you know what? That's not a bad idea. So that's kind of when the story first started to take on the form of a book in my head. And then I started jotting down ideas for sort of themes and issues. I knew I wanted it to be about sort of philosophical issues, but I knew I wanted to put that across in a sort of funny, light-hearted, mainly way. So I started jotting those things down, and I thought, well, this has got to be not a philosophy book, but a novel. So then I started thinking about the characters, and I started sketching those out. So by the time I got back from traveling, I had the nugget of the idea and some of the characters, but it wasn't really until I started writing them down that they took on a life of their own, and that I started to see how this journey might unfold and how I might fold in a lot of those sort of philosophical thoughts and issues that I wanted to tackle.
And being an author, is that something that you'd been aspiring to previously?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm one of those people who, I've always written since I was a kid. I've got books full of little stories and poems. I wrote a lot of poetry, and I have published a book of poetry as well. So I've always been writing. I wrote plays, and I wrote like little newsletters at school, and little skits and sketches at university. And then, as you mentioned, a few years back now, it is a friend of mine just kind of. So I've played hockey all my life, and this was at a hockey game. A friend of mine who I knew was a writer said, "Oh, why don't we write a musical?" And I thought, why not? So we ended up, and that's the only time I've worked with someone, which is actually a really interesting experience, because you get immediate pushback and feedback on your ideas, and you're constantly being pushed to make your writing better, which actually is really good. And you don't get that in a novel unless you belong to a writing group, which I thoroughly recommend. So we just wrote this musical, and luckily, I mean, I started even like writing down songs, and I'm not musical, but thank goodness she knew someone who is a musician and who wrote these incredible songs. How this woman is not famous, I do not know. And so we came up with the script, which is the dialogue, and she came up with these incredible songs. And it was sort of loosely based on the hockey team that we played in, but then obviously dramatized for stage and screen. It never made it to the screen yet. And then we put it on locally, and it was so successful that we decided to take it to London. And we're lucky enough to get it's you won't know unless you're in Britain or you're familiar with the West End, but it used to be called the Drill Hall, which is quite a sort of famous alternative lesbian venue. And then it became the RADA Studios. The RADA is the sort of British film, actually I don't know what it stands for, something dramatic arts, Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, there you go. So it's quite sort of, it's got a big reputation, and we managed to secure a night there and sold out a performance there. So it was amazing, a really amazing experience.
And how long ago was that was showing?
Yeah, good question. I'd say that was about 2011, 2012.
Okay.
In fact, it was just before the Olympics, because it was about hockey. We invited the British Olympic hockey team to it, and a bunch of them came, and we got photos and had a great chat with them. And it was brilliant.
We've got quite a few people watching, which is great, and got some questions coming through from people watching. Kelly says your cover is very eye-catching, and she wonders if you designed it.
Oh, I would I would love to take credit for that. No, it was my fantastic publishers, Red Door Press, and it's a lady called Emily Cordell. And this was sort of, or a version of this was really the first idea she came up with. We did experiment with a lollipop as well, but that didn't work with the title. So yeah, no, I love it. And the back, I don't know if you can see there. I had in my head. I don't know if you know the cover of one of Bill Bryson's books, and it's got this windy road on it.
Yeah,
and
I've
it
seen
just
a few
really
of
appealed
hers,
to me.
but yeah. Mm.
And I really wanted something like that. And so when they told me I could have that on the back cover as well, that was fantastic. So yeah, no, it's a brilliant cover, and I'm sure people pick it up just because of the cover, which is what it's designed to do.
Yeah, yeah. And Wendy says she loves to travel and looking forward to do more soon. Have you actually travelled in something like an ice cream van?
Well, not an ice cream van. No, I wish I had. And the idea for an ice cream van just came sort of quite randomly. These things often happen when you're writing. A strange idea will come to you and you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. But no, I used to own a little camper van. It was a Bedford Rascal, which is a very small camper van, but I absolutely loved it, and I would trundle around Britain in it. But I never actually got to take it onto foreign shores because it was one of the original 1960s builds. And I'm not sure I mean, very much like the ice cream van, it would not go above 60 miles an hour, and it shook. So a lot of the feel of my camper van went into the ice cream van.
Yeah.
But no, my van would not even got to France, I don't think.
And Belinda wonders, we said before that you've been to Australia. She wonders if you have any anecdotes that you could that you could share with us about travelling in Australia.
Well, I probably could, but I'm not sure. What time are you? No,
it's adults only here, so.
I had a fantastic time in Australia. I will tell you one of the weirdest things that happened to me, and this didn't make it into the book. So I went to a big festival, I think in Sydney. So we had friends in Sydney and also stayed in Melbourne. And we went to some big festival. I don't remember the name of it. And a woman just came up to me at this festival and was just sort of chatting. Then she said, "Can I try something on you?" I'm not going to do the accent. She was Australian. "Can I try something on you?" And I sort of said, "Well, yeah." It was a party. I was like, I don't know what she's going to do. And she put her hands in my mouth. This was pre-COVID. And opened my mouth really wide until my jaw cracked.
Oh wow.
And then said to me, "Oh yeah, this is like some ancient healing thing, and it will open your mind and all of this sort of stuff." And I was thinking, she is probably high on drugs at this point. And at this point I did step away. And then someone else came up to me and she said, "You do realise that was the winner of Australian Pop Idol?" Now, again, I don't remember the girl's name, but okay. So the winner of Australian Pop Idol 1 year came up and did some weird voodoo stuff on me. So that's probably my best story.
Did you ever have any jaw problems or anything after that?
Do you know what I have? My jaw sometimes clicks if I yawn too much. So yeah, that's a lasting legacy. Yeah, so thanks for that, Pop Idol lady.
Kelly wonders what's been your favourite country or place to visit in your travels.
Oh, definitely. Well, I have two favourites, Cambodia and Nepal. And I would say of those, I would pick Kathmandu in Nepal. And it's the reason that it sort of features quite heavily in the book towards the end. It's kind of their final destination. And I absolutely loved it. It's a riot of colour, religions, hippies, cows in the road. It's mental. I mean, you can't. You have to kind of experience it. It's quite hard to describe the feeling that you get from from you don't, you might think you'd feel overwhelmed with that much kind of noise and different things going on around you, but it's just got this amazingly calm feel about the place. And I went before the earthquake destroyed a lot of their beautiful monuments, which was terrible. And so I was lucky enough to see it before any of that happened. And I would go back there in a flash. It was beautiful. And Everest is just over there. You can see it on as you're having your sunset cocktail on the roof of your hotel. It's just a beautiful, wonderful place, and the people are amazing.
And I was talking to you a little bit before we started. Are you able to tell people about your full-time job? It sounded very interesting.
You say that. You wouldn't say that if you had to do it every day. So we were saying that a lot of my traveling I got to do because I'm a researcher, and I was originally an academic researcher. And if you're lucky enough as a researcher, you get to go to conferences the world over. And the price of that is that you just have to give a little paper or a symposium or whatever. But you get to go to some of the most amazing places. So I got to go to New Zealand. I've been to South Africa. I've been to, stretching my memory now because I haven't been for a while, but all over Europe. I've been to Finland, Lapland. I got to go to Moscow in the early 90s, which was an incredible experience because it was 93, I believe, so just after 1989, when obviously big changes were happening, and we were confined to our hotel because the situation there was quite unstable. Quite a few people were not allowed visas to go because they came from I don't know why they were denied. There was people from Austria and Germany that were denied visas. We weren't allowed out of the hotel except on accompanied trips into the centre where we were kind of told what we could see and what we couldn't see. The poverty was quite shocking at that time. People were literally queuing around the corner just to buy a loaf of bread. I know that is their system. That's the way that they do it. Things have changed a lot now, but it was noticeable. And I'll tell you what, vodka and champagne were cheaper than bottled water. So that tells you something about the culture and the state of their health. So I've got to go to some amazing places with my work, and now I am a researcher in charity. So I work exclusively for charities and not-for-profits. Which unfortunately means I don't get to go on expensive conferences because we don't have the money. But it means that I get to do work that I'm really proud of and really passionate about, and hopefully makes a difference.
So it sounds like you've certainly had a lot of really great experiences. Does that mean you've got a lot more books in you?
I do. I really do. I've got a lot in my head, and I said I've always kind of had this, and I've got notebooks. I mean, I'm sure. Are you a writer?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I'm sure a lot of our listeners a lot of readers are also writers. Whether you're published or not doesn't make you not a writer. And I think if you've got writing in your blood, you hoard notebooks and you constantly are jotting down little ideas. And I've got ideas for children's books, for radio plays, for screenplays, for more novels. I've started, several more novels. But my issue is at the moment, I mean, we've kind of covered it in my bio. I have a 4-year-old son who's super hyperactive. He wakes at about 5 o'clock every morning and always has done. So I'm severely sleep deprived. I'm menopausal, which means a lot of days I don't even remember my own name. And I run my own business. I'm a freelance researcher. So I don't currently have the time to actually get these ideas out. I mean, I'm halfway through that children's book. I've got the radio play mapped out, but I haven't had the time to actually get them finished, which is a bit frustrating. but I'm waiting for that mythical moment, that mythical time when I will be able to do that, because that's where I love my job. I love my job as a researcher, but I love writing a tiny bit more. So either when he goes to school or I win the lottery, then I really want to do more writing. And the dream would be to be a full-time writer. And a lot of so I belong to a group called the D20s authors, which is a group of us who were all published in 2020, all had our debuts out. And a lot of them are now on their second, third and fourth books. And I'm very jealous. And, you know, some of them are managing to do that around work, which I'm also super jealous of, and I think they're amazing. But that's my dream, to be a full-time writer and to be doing this all the time. I love it.
And Wendy's wondering if you have plans to publish any more of your poetry.
Well, again, it's one of those things that I would love to do. I'm going to be doing some posts on the website later, and I'll put the link to my current collection up there. Poetry was sort of my first love, and I do find that if you haven't got the time to write a novel, you have got the time to write a poem. And during the pandemic, I did manage to write a poem that ended up in a charity book. So it's raising money for NHS workers who were looking after everyone during the COVID pandemic. I think it's called Poems for the Pandemic. And again, that's on my website, and I'll post the link. But it's a funny story actually, because a friend asked me to write a poem, and I just happened to have been working on one sort of spontaneously in my head. Just some imagery had come to me, and I didn't know what to do with it. And when he said they were doing this book of poetry, I thought that's what I can do with this. So I tailored it towards this collection. And the next thing I knew, this collection was a bestseller. As an ebook, and it had gone to #1 in the charts, and it was raising loads of money for the NHS charity. So now I can actually say that I'm a best-selling author, which is it's a slight stretch, but I'm going with it. So yes, I do want to publish more poetry in future, just the same as I want to do more writing of all kinds.
And I might be putting you on the spot because I didn't say this beforehand, but do you have anything of your poetry you'd like to read to us?
Ooh. I'm looking at my bookshelf and wondering if I can. Well, let me see if I can just reach this. Bear with me.
Okay.
I'm sitting on a beanbag, and it's really not easy to get out. Oh. Back. Ooh, picture nearly fell over. Here we go. All right, I've grabbed my book. What I'm looking for is the one I wrote for the pandemic. Let me just see if I can find that. Otherwise, I'll read that one. I'll just see. Bear with me. Oh, here we go. Found it. It's handy. So I've been thinking about this. I love birds of prey. I just think they're beautiful, and I used to do a lot of bird watching. Sounds really odd when you say it, doesn't it? But I did used to, go out and try and find birds of prey to watch when I was a student. And I live near the cliffs here, so we have kestrel, a lot of kestrels that hunt along there, and we've also got some peregrines, which are my favourite bird. So I've been thinking about the peregrine, and I think it's to do with, when you're on lockdown, your thoughts turn to freedom, and what's more freeing than flying. So I've been thinking about peregrines, and I was imagining looking at and there are all these stories in the news about how birds of prey, because we're all on lockdown and sitting in our houses, lots of birds of prey had come into towns and cities, and where they don't usually come, and they were, you know, so they'd been spotted on hospitals or, you know, in car parks. So I was thinking, you know, what if I was in hospital with COVID and I could see one of these peregrines outside? So it's called Peregrine Nation. I have been watching you, the way you torpedo the sky, flick-flacking in the currents, diving and banking, hovering on the updrafts, a bullet in stop motion. Then, almost weightless, a stalled Spitfire, you drop and barrel and roll, folding your wings in slots, the horizon spilling like wine. Down and down, a dropped bomb, sinew and feather and claw shivering, tensing, anticipating. You level out in an instant, parachute wings unfurled, prey caught in your sights as surely as in a trap. Another few moments and it will all be over. I have studied your moves, flexing my fingers, arching my back, learning by rote every minute adjustment, fighting cramps and contortions, my weakened limbs twitching at the unaccustomed effort. In my dreams, day and night, I follow you, over the cliff, my last ecstasy of hope.
No, thanks for sharing that. That was great. I'm wondering what you like to read yourself, and if maybe there is something you've read lately you want to recommend to us.
I was hoping you would say that, because I realised I've done a lot of reading over lockdowns and through the pandemic. I've done more reading than I have in a long time, and I think that's also partly being a published author. As I said, I've read a lot of debuts because I'm part of this group, so I've read more debuts than I ever have. And there have been so many great books published. So, yeah, I have a whole pile here for you. So my top recommendations for debuts that were out recently, this is across lots of genres. So if you're into thrillers, which I tend to go to thrillers for a bit of relaxation. I know that may sound odd, but it really takes me out of myself into another world. So one of my top thrillers is The Silent Daughter by Emma Christie. It's got a twist. Is it backwards for you?
No, it's the right way. I said it looks interesting. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's she's a Scottish author, and it's got a twist at the end that you will never see coming.
Oh, really? It's
a really cool one. Another good one. I think you've had Vic.
Yes, just right, not too long ago. Yeah.
So this was her first one, Smart Woman's Guide to Murder. I know she's had two out, the Body on the Island, and now the Supper Club Murders. I love these because they're funny. They're a dark twist on the sort of country house, the old Agatha Christie style. But she's very funny, and she's a brilliant author. This one I love, The Man on the Street, Trevor Wood. Okay. So the hero in this series, it's now a series, he's got 3 out at the moment. The hero is a homeless veteran. So he's a guy who's come back from the Falklands, actually, and he's now fighting crime on the streets. And it's a really interesting twist on that sort of genre. And this one I love to recommend, My Perfect Sister by Penny Batchelor.
I think Penny had as well in it. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant! So Penny's a stablemate. We call each other stablemates. Apparently, if you're from the same publishers, that's what you are. So Penny's another Red Door author. Yeah. And this one is about dark childhood secrets that come back to haunt the main character. And another stablemate of mine, E.C. Emma Scullion. So Intruders, she's now got Evaders out as well. This is a fantastic. I couldn't put this one down. This is the start of the Tom Holt series. And the thing that I've realised about debuts is that these are people who are bestsellers in the making. So when you read a debut, you're getting in at the ground floor, just when someone's starting out. And I'm very much hoping that some of these guys make it so big that, that I can come to glitzy do's with them
Yeah.
because they're my friends. That's why I'm keeping in with them. But this one is a romp through South America, and their mission. It says there's a safe in a house inside a secure compound in South America. Your job is to bring me the contents of that safe, and the whole story pans out around that. And it's
like
a real
good one as
real
well.
page turner.
Yeah.
And lastly, I've got two uplit. So my book was marketed as uplit, which I'd never heard of personally. Uplifting literature.
Okay. No, I haven't heard of that.
So a couple of other ones that are also uplit. Do you know this one, The Miseducation of Evie Epworth?
No.
So Matson Taylor, very funny guy. This is a sort of nostalgic, another romp really through Yorkshire, which is where I come from. So that was one thing that drew me to this. But it's set in the 60s, and it's the story of Evie, and she's lost her mother, and it's got, there's a wicked soon-to-be stepmother. It's it's a sort of modern retelling of a classic tale, but very, very funny. And lastly, Tim Ewins. I think he's an insurance salesman. I think he genuinely is, but he's got such a dry sense of humour, and that's why I kind of said that. So this is really quirky. We Are Animals. It's actually the one that's sort of closest to mine in genre because it's a travelogue. So the blurb for this is: a cow looks out to sea in Goa, dreaming of a life that involves grass. And this it's honestly, you have to kind of read it to get it. But I absolutely loved this book, and his humour is just so dry. It's just really, really, really funny. So those are my top tips for debuts. But have I got 2 minutes to?
Yeah, sure.
Tell you a couple of other books?
Share away. We always love adding more books to our lists.
Fabulous. So the one I've just finished, I'm sure a lot of people will be reading this. So Shuggy. Oh, I love Shuggy. I just shed a lot of tears throughout and at the end. My father's from Glasgow, so I kind of could hear his voice when I was reading that book, which was an added kind of dimension to it. Another couple of, because I was trying to kind of read the debuts and also read some of the kind of up to the minute books. So this one somebody bought me for my birthday, Detransition Baby. What was it up for? The Women's Prize for Fiction. It's one of those books that people say it's an important book. It is. It talks about the experience of being trans and detransitioning, which no one kind of really talks about, and wanting to have a baby as a trans woman. Really, really moving, very important, like a need to know kind of book. And another one in that vein. Oh, I loved this. Patricia Lockwood's No One Is Talking About This. Have you read this?
No, but I think I've heard that one. Yeah.
It's so this is, again, it's a book of the moment because it's really about someone who is a social media, I don't even know what you call them, someone whose life is about social, but an influencer. Yeah. So they're an influencer. Yeah. So their whole life is lived on social media. And then a tragedy happens to them, and it's about how they deal with that tragedy. And it's it starts off being this sort of joyful nonsense. It's just sort of, it's done in kind of snippets, as if they're tweets or posts. And you start thinking, oh, this is kind of nonsense, but it's joyful nonsense, and it's a fun read. And then the tragedy hits, and then you're like, wow, this is now profound nonsense. Yeah. And then by the end, you're like, wow, this is just profound. This is just a profound read. I just loved it. So there you go. There's my book recs.
Well, thanks. That was some great recommendations. Thanks. And lots of people watching are saying thanks for the recommendations you've been given. Cool. Kelly said that she loves the emergence of uplift stories. She's been really drawn more and more to that category this year, which I think a lot of us have.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what, my publishers originally said, oh, yeah, people will be reading Uplift during the pandemic. And I think at the beginning it wasn't true, because they then realized that a lot of people were reaching for authors that they knew, old favorites, and didn't want to sort of risk things, risk authors that they didn't know.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of new Uplift around. But I think now that we're learning to live with COVID, I think, we need a lift. We need something that's going to, get us through
exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking to me. It's been great chatting to you. Just want to tell everyone watching that Kat will be doing some posts throughout the day as well. So throughout her day, it's coming into our night. But as we are a global group, I'm sure there's lots who will be around during the day for you. And others will be able to see your posts later. So looking forward to seeing that. And thanks also to everyone who's joined in and the questions that we had.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks very much for having me.
No, thanks. And look forward to hearing some more about you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Jackie.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.